What kind of watch collector am I? What kind of collector do I want to be? And what kind are you? Let's have a chat. Welcome back to Adventures with Time. Or if this is your first time viewing us, welcome to Adventures with Time. I'm your host, Bob. On this channel, I chronicle my adventures in watch collecting, and I share with you what I learned and how I've grown my collection and how my views may have changed. But before we get into the topic for this episode, a wrist check. I'm wearing the Melbourne Portsea, a watch from Australia that not only gives you the time and the date, it also gives you the day of the week and the month. Now for today's topic. I've been collecting watches now for about 18 months, almost 2 years. Last year in 2018, I went heavy on acquiring watches for my collection. And I think it's come to the point in time where I need to decide, what type of collector am I? And what type do I want to be? In the various YouTube videos, people I've seen at watch shows, articles and forums I've read, I've come to think that there are a few types of collectors. First of all, there is the very narrow collector, someone who only has 2 or 4 watches that they wear regularly, and that's the limit of their collection. These could either be vintage watches or watches of sentimental value, or maybe a few high-end watches. Next, there is the collector that just accumulates watches, even if they can wear some and not wear others. They never get rid of anything. And third, there is the collector that continually evolves their collection, getting rid of watches that they don't like or that are lower down on the like scale, or watches they don't wear, making room not only in their collection but in their budget for new watches. Now, over the past year and a half, I've enjoyed experiencing different types of watches. Not only watches with different complications and different quality levels, but watches from different countries. And the point of this was to really experience a broad range of watches. But it's come to the point where I have to decide, I think, which direction in collecting I'm going to take. And part of this decision is based on how I use my collection. I tend to pick a watch to wear for the week, and I wear it all week. Next week, I rotate to another watch, giving all the watches an equal amount of wrist time and love. Of course, there are some watches that are sentimental or very old, maybe not in working condition, that I keep in my collection and never wear. But let's exclude those from this discussion. So I'm up now about 12 to 14 watches. And I think once I hit about 16 watches in my wear rotation, that's about at the upper limit of manageability. Again, based on how I wear my watches. At 16 watches, with equal distribution of wearing those watches, a watch is not going to see wrist time for about 4 months. That's a long time. And I don't think I want any watch to go longer than that without seeing some wrist time. So in looking back over the last year and a half, I do believe I was the type of collector I mentioned second. That is, accumulating the watches I'm interested in and not getting rid of anything. But I think I have to change. I want to experience more and more watches. And to do that, I'm going to shortly have to reduce the size of my collection or reduce some watches from my collection to make room for new watches. That means I'm going to have to get rid of some watches. And what way do we do that? We sell them on eBay. Now, I'm an experienced eBay buyer and seller for my other collecting interests, mainly tokens. Although there, I collect and I don't really sell anything. I try to broaden the scope of my collection, finding new acquisitions. Yes, I do sell duplicates or when I have to buy a large collection to get just a few pieces, I sell off the ones I don't need. So I know how to sell on eBay, but selling watches is going to be a new experience. And there's one critical fact I have to get over. I'm going to lose money on the watches I sell. That's not the same with token collecting, where I can usually break even or make some money on these collectibles. But with watches, especially the watches I've been buying, new watches, most assuredly the price I'm going to be able to sell it for is lower than the price I bought it for. Maybe as much as 50%. That's something that's going to be hard for me to accept. But I'm willing to give it a try because the type of collector that I want to be is that third type. Someone who continually evolves their collection, getting rid of the watches that I'm not that in love with, and getting new watches, experiencing new watches, and constantly growing the number of watches that I really like. Yes, eventually I may get to the point where there's none of them that I want to sell, but we're not there yet, and we'll worry about that when we get there. So my next step is eBay. Over the next 2 or 3 weeks, I'll pick out 1 or 2 watches that I'd rather sell to make room for new watches in my collection, because I do have some on the radar, and I'll sell them on eBay. And be assured I'll post those experiences and my feelings in an upcoming video here on YouTube. So what do you think of my collecting plans? Leave me a comment below, and also tell me what kind of collector you are. I'd really like to understand what other people do. And don't forget to subscribe and ring that bell icon so you're alerted as soon as I post my next video. And next on the list is a new acquisition, a type of watch that I've been looking at since I started collecting, and I think I'm finally ready to pull the trigger. Watch as I go through my options, the watch I ultimately selected, and a review of that watch. Thanks for watching. Stay tuned.